Hello, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant. Today, I'm going to be discussing this book, Journey to Chandara. Journey to Chandara is from the Dinotopia series, and I found this a while back, and I could have sworn I put it back there in a couple of videos. This is written and illustrated by James Gurney, and when I purchased this, I bought it from Brave Books in El Paso, Texas, for $25. The specific reason I decided to buy this is because, in addition to having loved the Dinotopia novels as a kid, and the Dinotopia series in general, this copy is also signed, and there's a little art on one of the pages as well. So let's see how well. There you go. This was a book copyright 2007, and this copy is 2017. The paintings were all executed in oil. This was first published by Calla Editions in 2017. This is one of those books with a very similar conceit as Tolkien's work. So if you're familiar at all with the concept, in Lord of the Rings, the conceit is that Tolkien is the translator of these books that they had found, the Red Book, which is in the closing portion of Return of the King. There's a comment about how Samwise Gamgee passed on the Red Book, which had been first written by Bilbo Baggins and then added to by Frodo Baggins and then added to again by Samwise Gamgee. And when he left for the Undying Lands, he took the book and passed it on to his daughter, who that family up on the North Downs ended up keeping it through many generations. This has a similar conceit, and it explains it in the first page. One thing about this is that there isn't a large number of, like, the word count for this book isn't exceedingly high, despite it having 190 pages. And that's because a lot of this is like full page spreads of art or double page spreads of art. So oftentimes any words on the page are captions to a bigger picture. Page 6 says, "How I Found the New Journal. Some years ago in a university library, I stumbled upon a sketchbook by a little-known explorer named Arthur Denison. Like many other travelers in the Victorian age, he documented the landscapes, people, and animals that he encountered as he journeyed to remote frontiers of the globe. What sets Mr. Denison apart is that the island he described, called Dinotopia, no longer appears on modern maps of the world. Not only that, his sketchbooks portray a society where humans live alongside a race of wise and intelligent dinosaurs. I have been searching for a long time to find out more about Mr. Denison. My breakthrough came recently when I found the following advertisement: for sale 19th century journal, cover stamped with footprint-like letters and dinosaur motif, novelty binding." And then he closes off that section about, "During the last few months, book conservators have studied the journal, and the Smithsonian Institution has displayed the original artifact in Washington, D.C. For the many people who have written me letters asking for further evidence of Dinotopia, I offer the following account, written in Arthur Denison's own hand, of the marvelous new things that he witnessed during his trek in 1869 across the land apart from time." And what follows is, like, this is a beautiful double page spread of artwork. Kind of very Naboo-like in design, to refer to that planet from Star Wars. And so there's a lot of interesting art. There's a lot of, like, character work, a lot of mythology within this. There's a couple songs with very simple time signatures and notes, and all sorts of interesting accommodations. So in the setting of Dinotopia, humans live alongside dinosaurs, and generally they live alongside the omnivorous or herbivorous dinosaurs, or alongside carnivorous dinosaurs that eat really small things that aren't otherwise intelligent. And so there are additional expansions into the story that set it apart. So, like, a lot of fish are eaten in this series. And so, carnivorous dinosaurs that do partake in society are primarily fish eaters. And then there's the pterosaurs, who primarily eat fish rather than carrion or animals. There are, I want to say there's some raptors. In one of the novels, there's a story about some raptors, and the thing I remember about that is that the raptors have a like test of speed and like an obstacle course, that the condition is to get to the end first, and the human in the story ends up winning in an unorthodox way because he realizes he can't beat the dinosaur he's competing against in the obstacles, but the rules don't say anything about out of bounds, so he goes to the section between the two obstacle courses and just sprints through to the end. And thus, though he won strictly in a legal sense, the dinosaurs kind of disrespect him for not taking the obstacle course seriously and respect him for his ingenuity and creativity in that solution. And so it's an interesting setting where that kind of thing can happen. On page 38 and 39 is a double spread about how firefighting works in this society, where there's a sewer system where in this system there is a sewer where the brachiosaur, or whatever kind of sauropod with a longer neck and the ability to raise that neck up, what they do is they have a hose connected to a foot pump, and the dinosaur steps on that pump to change the pressure in the system, and the hose extends all the way up to their head, which then sprays out at like 40 feet above ground, and it kind of looks like this. So it's whimsical, it's fantasy, it's beautiful art, and this particular story is about Arthur and a companion Protoceratops, Bix, who are permitted to travel from the main civilization that is covered in Dinotopia to an Eastern empire. And it's called an empire, but there's no like it's called an empire, but the conceit is that basically everyone in both societies is almost communistic in a way. And the main difference is just that the empire has a singular ruler, whereas the rest of society has a democratically elected council. And so the emperor is still as culturally communistic as everyone else is, in a way that is distinctly non-Marxist. They don't have weapons. And so in Marxism, everyone should be armed so that way they can defend themselves from upper classes that are trying to lord over them. In Dinotopia, everyone has that equality, and so no one needs those weapons, which seems a bit weird because, in my eyes, the way they describe travel through certain regions infested by theropods is that they need to hide, they need to do basically anything. They can't defend themselves with weapons because they don't have weapons, and so they have to use subterfuge and you know, tricks such as covering themselves with mud to disguise their scent and things like that. So there isn't quite the sense of modern communism in it, but everything is it's a society where everyone is equal, everyone is fed, everyone has resources to pursue their interests rather than having to spend money or anything like that. Everyone is able to get those resources. Part of the point of this book is the afterword here says, soon after the first two Dinotopia books were published in the early 1990s, new fossils emerged from China that began to rewrite the book on how we imagine dinosaurs. I eagerly followed the new developments. By the late 1990s, it became clear that many dinosaurs resembled birds. The birds of our world are actually remnants of the dinosaur line. Scientists started calling them avian dinosaurs, and as it turns out, dinosaurs are not extinct after all. So, as his mind wandered back to Dinotopia, he wondered how these new scientific discoveries could be reflected in the magic mirror of this alternate universe. And so, the way to find out would be to send Arthur and Bix on an expedition to a part of the island they hadn't seen before. And in that part of the island, they find non avian dinosaurs that have feathers. And so, for example, this is a splash spread of the Oviraptor, and it has blue feathers all up and down its body. The only parts that appear bare are the underside of its neck and its feet, and the crest on its head. So that's one aspect, and then it describes how fashion in that region is partially dependent on the Oviraptor's plumage, where the dinosaurs of Chandara use their feathers to express a wide range of emotions. The feathers lie along certain tracts or zones of the body. Special muscles can instantly raise or lower these tracts to change the outward shape of the body. Unlike bird feathers, which are specialized for flight, those of the flightless dinosaurs are perfected for polite communication. I have come to appreciate that the saurian is not some alternate form of human, but rather a completely foreign intelligence, guided by its own inborn sense of time and purpose. And so the fashion emulates these feathers, but then also it shows how, this is the page right after that Oviraptor one that I just showed. This one shows how they're using like sign language or body language because they don't have those feathers to affect their indication of mood, but they do have forms of dress that emulate those feathers, and then they also have forms of bodily expression to communicate similar to how the feathered dinosaurs communicate. So the book is separated mostly into the journey to Chandara, the actual destination and culture of Chandara, and then the afterword. And the afterword is really fascinating, just reading the thoughts and processes that go into this art and the narration. The Chandara portion is interesting in how newer discoveries about dinosaurs affect fiction and narration about dinosaurs in general. So you don't see it in Jurassic Park, which I just watched the other night, but you do see it in Dinotopia. And another aspect is that, like, in Jurassic Park, the meteorite theory had been around for at least a decade by the time of the release of Jurassic Park, but the Chicxulub crater wasn't properly found on Earth until like 1990 or 1989, and that wasn't even published until 1991. So when Jurassic Park came out, it had incomplete information because there were still discoveries being made about how dinosaurs interacted, and the crater is discussed as a like idea and not a generally understood aspect of the extinction of dinosaurs. It is mentioned in the movie, but it's not mentioned with the authority that it normally would be in 2025. So there is that, and how these discoveries affect the processes. And it is really nice to see a behind the scenes of how birds work, how birds communicate, how different animals that he researched communicate. And it's just an interesting aspect of an a very intriguing setting. And so I paid $25 for this. This is a really cool book. You know, I saw Dinotopia when they had that CGI and live action series on TV. It was at the local library, the novels were, and these books were on display at the gift shop at the Smithsonian Institution's Museum of Natural History. So, having grown up near Washington, D.C., we would go there often, and I always liked dinosaurs. And where my brother had a stuffed bear named Radar when he was a kid, myself growing up around Washington, D.C., I had a stuffed T Rex named obviously Rex, and that was from the Natural History Museum's gift shop. And Dinotopia interests me because I have always been around that, and because to a certain degree, my dad, when I was a kid, he would take us to a state park. I don't think it's actually a state park anymore, or even was back then, but it was called Perce State Park. And it's this beach on the Potomac River where I've been going there since at least 2000, probably in 99 even. And that's 26 years ago. Every time I've been there, I've been finding shark teeth, fossil shark teeth from the beds of the Potomac River. Some mostly, tiny ones that big or so, maybe half a centimeter. But I've seen a couple that are a couple centimeters long, maybe almost an inch or more in length. You don't get really big shark teeth there, but you get really cool fossil shark teeth. And that interest in fossils was partially because we went to the Natural History Museum. It was partially because my dad wanted us to go out and see these resources and get us interested in these kinds of things. And we used to take strainers and we would go straight from church to home, get all of the stuff, go right to Perth State Park, and then come back later in the day. And so that was a really fun memory. And part of why I have always loved Dinotopia is because of that presence of fossils in my life, but also the presence of the museums in my life. And this is one of those kinds of intellectual properties that if you have a young kid in your life, or even if you want to admire the art, this is a very good way for them to get into that. It's also just a really interesting story. It's a really interesting artist behind this work. And like I said, I cannot recommend this enough. If you have someone young that really likes dinosaurs, anything Dinotopia is going to spark so much joy in their imagination. And I think if you've seen the art that I was presenting in this video, you will understand exactly what I mean. So, yeah, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant.